Well, hello! Welcome, Colliders. Daniel here, joined by a very special guest to talk about some sweet, sweet British escapism. So grab your scone, make some tea, and let's talk about this. So what's up, guys? As you can see, I'm not alone this time. I have some company here. I brought someone that promised to, if I let her on the table, she'd make me scones and
the one that got the better half of the gene pool.
This is. We'll let you decide that in the comments. This is my sister. Some of you longtime Collider fans, you've been following our channel for a while, know that I think maybe it was like the second or third review we ever did here on the Collision was for the first Downton Abbey movie. I knew nothing about it, or I was familiar with it. I hadn't watched a single minute of it.
And now you've watched 2 movies and still don't know much
yeah, and
about
I still don't know any of these characters' names. So I thought, like I did for the first movie review, I bring on my sister, who actually did watch the show. So maybe we can kind of come at this from the perspective of someone that knows what's going on, and someone that's just here for the fancy outfits and the escapism, and maybe you fall somewhere in the middle there. So Downton Abbey, a new era. Kind of following off the continuation of the popular series, and then the movie, which came out a couple years ago. We just saw it a couple hours ago, so we're still kind of processing this thing. But as a Downton Abbey fan, like, what's your general impression of this movie?
Well, it was called Downton Abbey, A New Era, and it may be a new era, but it's the same old Downton. And I think it brought back all the warm, fuzzy feelings from the series and the first movie, so... As a longtime fan, I have to say, it may be escapism, but I enjoyed every minute of the escape.
Yeah, well, we were actually even talking before we started filming this that it's sort of like, this, our tea and our scone is kind of like a metaphor for these movies. Again, I don't know much about the series itself.
Or tea or scones.
Or tea or scones. But there's this thing comfortable about it. You kind of know what to get. It really is escapism in its kind of finest form, I guess. Like, not a whole lot of consequence necessarily happens, at least in the 2 movies that I've seen. It really is about like the characters and sort of the culture changing around them. So we'll get into a couple things, talk a bit about this sort of the movie kind of generally, and then get into maybe some of the content stuff that as Christians we can be aware of, and then kind of end just digging into what I think maybe are some of the themes or stuff going on kind of beneath the surface. But how did this movie measure up, I guess, as far as like the series, or were you satisfied? It seems, we don't know, we were talking about this on the way home, this might be the end, so we're not going to spoil plot things right now, but was it satisfying? Like, was it...
I think so. I was thinking, I have 2 daughters at home, and I still think my house has fewer bows than that movie, but I don't know. I mean, I think they kind of know what their audience wants, and they gave it to us. And so I came out of it satisfied. I wasn't really expecting some deep psychological thriller that was going to change my worldview, and, but I thought it was good. I thought it was pleasant, and it was kind of exactly what I was hoping.
Yeah, and this movie's funny. I don't know if the show is funny. There's some drama obviously in here, but there's a lot of humor. At least to me, the thing that I take away that I enjoyed this movie a lot. I can't remember the first one well enough to remember if I like it more. I think I probably liked it about the same. But you do. This movie really is just about the banter. It's about the characters. Yeah. It's kind of a kind of wider scope, I think. Even with like the title of A New Era, it's really kind of about these kind of this diverse characters, different kind of classes, different kind of walks of life, and sort of as they navigate, they're kind of in the same area, but just sort of navigating the different challenges of the era. Things are changing. Kind of one of the plot points in this is that they are making a moving picture. They're making a movie, kind of starting off as a silent movie and transitioning into making like a talkie picture. I think, did they say this is like the 30s, the 20s?
It's the end of the 20s going into the 30s. I think it's 1928.
Okay, yeah, so it's kind of like right on the cusp of, when kind of the modern world is really coming on, and I think that's a lot of the enjoyment of the movie, at least to me, is like it's a movie about kind of losing some of this like traditional stuff, and I think for those of us viewers that like live in the modern world, there's something satisfying, I think, about escaping back into, I don't know if it's like a simpler time, but just a different time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about the world changing, but I think the movie itself was still kind of comfortingly. It talked a lot about things changing, but it wasn't really pushing a whole lot of boundaries itself.
Yeah,
it's pretty safe, but
it knows what it is. And I would say someone that's only seen 2 movies, I think you probably caught more of like what's going on or some of the deeper. I don't know the histories of all these characters, but I don't know if you necessarily need to. I don't know if I think there are probably some people like me that are just, coming to the movie versions. And obviously there's things that I don't really know, like the connections and like some of the more emotional stuff at the end. Like I'm kind of like, I wanted to like elbow you and be like, no, how do they know each other?
Why
like,
do I care about
what do I care about this person? Whose kid is whose? And
I've watched the whole series twice and actually went to Downton Abbey in England, and I still kind of struggle to keep some of them straight. So
yes. She said she's not a fake Downton expert.
Fan.
She is being there. Any kind of main takeaway we can kind of move into? I think because a lot of even the stuff I want to talk about with this movie, I think kind of relates more to kind of like the theme, what this movie is kind of about, and we can kind of dig into that. But just any other kind of general things as far as like things you liked about the movie, things you didn't like about the movie.
I think I liked it. Really leaned hard into the humorous aspect. I think in the actual series they delved a little bit deeper into some of the more emotional, intense in a way storylines. I feel like this one they really hit hard on more the comedic relief.
Yeah,
I think it was. I don't think they were going for something really. I mean, they're the emotional parts. I won't go into it for the spoiler alerts, but
But even the emotional parts,
they still were funny.
They were like people were like half the theater is kind of crying and sad about something, like the other half is just giggling about some.
I won't give any spoilers, but I'm #Team Maggie Smith like until my dying day.
Yeah, so she is a national treasure, at least a national treasure for those of you that are in England, but I think she's a treasure for us too. But again, I think there is value in this sort of comfort food movies, but just kind of to get away from some of the challenges of the modern world, even if I think there is a little bit more kind of going on beneath the surface. So as far as like kind of content, kind of surface level stuff in this movie, I don't know if you got any like profanity. I think if anything, kind of a couple mild things that I think people might consider,
wasn't much.
But not used. I think even in like a kind of gratuitous, like it's British, so there's probably expected some of that. But I don't know if you caught anything, or if that was kind of with the show. Violence,
none.
Yeah, no violence. That shouldn't be a big shock. So the sexuality part of this, if you're familiar, even as just me, as like a one movie guy, there is some, not sex. I don't know has there ever been like gratuitous stuff in there?
Not gratuitous, but any longtime fans will remember what was the Turkish dignitary, one of the early seasons. If you're a fan, you'll know what I'm talking about. That aside, not much.
Because now I'm curious. So you don't see, there's not like skin or anything in that sense. The sexuality, I don't know, what's the character? There's a same-sex kind of romance stuff.
And I was actually surprised at how veiled they kept that.
Because as far as I can remember from the last movie, that played I knew his storyline, and he had like a more prominent, I think, romantic scenes, and I remember they went kind of in a dance and he had a relationship, and so they definitely have that again. There's, again, we don't want to ruin or spoil plot things, but there is that underpinning, and it's not necessarily subtle, but it's not, I don't know, it's not as pushy. I don't know if you felt the same.
No, it seemed kind of understated. It wasn't really, I don't want to get into spoilers, but that wasn't really one of the major plot points anyway, so they didn't really belabor it too much.
Yeah, and I think especially at this point, if that is that storyline, I think I'm assuming this has been an ongoing thing in the series. I think people that have had a bigger issue with that are still going to have a bigger issue with it, but at least I, even coming in kind of a newbie, I knew that was coming, and it still is there, but I do think it is less than at least in the first movie. As far as kind of stuff kind of going on beneath the surface, themes and stuff, I don't know. I think maybe we'll do some kind of. This is a hard one to talk about without
giving spoilers.
Without kind of some mild spoilers. So maybe we'll get into a little bit of spoilers. Try not to ruin major plot points. If you don't want any of that, maybe come back after you've seen the movie and dialogue about that. But at least, and we were kind of talking about this on the way home. Like, at least to me, the kind of the main theme. I don't know if it's like you can let me know if it's like a main theme of like the whole series, is just sort of kind of holding on to traditional values, traditional kind of way of thinking in a world that's just sort of rapidly changing. Is that being...
Yeah, I mean, that's been throughout both movies and this series, I think, is their way of life is kind of a dying breed, as the idle rich, as they call them. That's not really a career option that can keep them with their massive estate and all of that, looking forward to the future. And that was definitely a theme. in this one.
Yeah, and you can kind of see it in different, a lot of the different characters. And again, saying like is sort of about like holding on to traditional things. Like it's maybe a better way to say it is sort of like adapting to the culture and kind of clinging to some things, even as things change. 'Cause again, like there's like with the sexuality stuff, not everything, there is adaptations. They don't hold on to everything. The movie seems to kind of make it clear that it's sort of, thinking of a very kind of monstrous world that, against some of the same sex stuff and what he goes through. And again, some of that is historically accurate. So it's not just like, I don't think this film necessarily is just like pushing traditional, like biblical values. But I think some of like what I took from it is that like, it's not necessarily that, as Christians, we need to like, adopt everything that the movies push. But I think it is interesting just to see these characters in a world that is changing. Even though it's set in the past, like I think there is connections we can make to like our culture and our world's changing. How do you kind of stand firm? Because there is like wholesome examples of that, right? Like throughout this film.
Yeah, they did. It's not like they just threw away the old-fashioned morality as something that's completely bad either.
Yeah, there's one character has basically an offer to have an affair with some handsome man, and she's tempted, and you can tell that this is something that she is thinking about, and kind of in that moment, I didn't really know where this is going to go. I'm used to kind of modern movies, and this character doesn't. I forget what's the exact line. Think about like I'm old-fashioned enough to
believe that there's something more important than what I want, or.
Yeah, it's there's something kind of worth, it's like a higher standard than just like my own emotions and kind of carnal.
The carnal passion in the moment that's not really the highest thing that matters, which is kind of an unusual take in Hollywood movies.
Yeah, and it was refreshing to kind of see that it does, it is affirming sort of the sacred value of just, marriage and that bond. And even when it's not, something that's necessarily emotionally satisfying to the characters, that is still worth kind of hanging on to that and working through that. And because even some of the other one of the, again, we maybe won't get into the specifics of it, but like one of the kind of the mysteries and stuff in this movie is did another kind of older character, like was she kind of unfaithful, did she do that? And I think like the way they resolve that is another wholesome example.
Yeah.
So I think there is aspects of that. Again, there's some things about the way that this family kind of adapts that I think will make Christians uncomfortable. There are other ways that Christians can definitely affirm. So it's not like an easy, kind of very neat way. But any kind of themes, I know we're talking about kind of a bit about like legacy.
Yeah, I think that's kind of another thing is that the characters, not even just the really old ones, but various characters throughout are kind of looking back on their life and evaluating if once their time ends, if they're pleased with what they've left behind. And I think that's an important, even if you're not, in your 90s, that's an important consideration. Because now's when we're making those decisions.
Yeah, because you can kind of, that's one of the values of like this like big ensemble cast, and just like the however many 3 or 4 generations that you have all kind of living in this area. And you can, again, don't want to give the specifics of it, but like even some of like the these 2 characters that did stay kind of faithful, you can kind of draw a line like that kind of ripples throughout. That sort of living, holding on to good values, and being kind of conservative in that, and not just sort of adapting and giving into your passions. You can like, that does sort of ripple throughout this generation, like the legacy. So I do think there's definitely a lot of things to wrestle through. Again, not always clean cut, but definitely some wholesome stuff, and there's some stuff for Christians to think about. But kind of final thoughts for this thing, like is this something that's gonna make Downton Abbey people happy, or do you want them to make more of these, or is this sort of like a satisfying send off to this?
Well, I think I said this after the first one when we did that review, but I think that they tied things up in a way that if this is the end, I think we can be happy that Downton has had a good run. But considering how much this movie is probably making, it's unlikely that they're going to leave it there.
Yeah. So I like the movie. I like the last movie. If they make another one, I'll go see it. I'll probably make my sister make me more scones.
Yeah, and I was thinking I would watch this movie with my grandmother. So that's an endorsement. There's nothing too shocking.
But with that, we'd love to hear what you guys think too, especially if you're like a big Downton Abbey fan like Carrie is, or if you're somewhat of a newbie that just enjoys escapism in its glorious British form like I do, then love to hear all different conversations, what you kind of thought of just the theme about, adapting and kind of maybe some parallels as Christians as we live in a world that is also changing, also challenging some of these conservative beliefs, and where do we kind of draw the line? How do we do that? We'd love to have those conversations with you guys. But thanks for watching, guys. I encourage you, if you haven't done so, subscribe to our channel. Got a lot of other reviews and live streams and this other fun stuff we got going on. We'd love to have you be a part of that. So thanks for watching, guys. Go make yourself some tasty scones, and God save the Queen.
Cheers.